Welcome to the One in the Many. My name is Arshak Ben-Lian. My purpose with the One in the Many podcast is to explore the process of integration as developmentally formative and therapeutically corrective factor in human psychology. The One in the Many is the study of how conscious life differentiates identity, integrates relation, regulates itself under constraint, and sustains direction through time. Subscribe to the One in the Many podcast and connect with me by writing to abenlian@oneinthemany.net. The central problem underlying philosophy, science, psychology, and civilization is not merely the existence of multiplicity, but the persistence of coherence within multiplicity across time. The ancient formulation of this problem appeared as the relation between the one and the many, unity and differentiation, permanence and change, being and becoming. Yet throughout history, most systems of thought emphasized either stability or transformation without fully formalizing the recursive process through which coherent identity persists while continuously evolving. What emerged from the present framework of the One in the Many is the possibility that integration itself constitutes the governing developmental principle through which existence preserves continuity amid expanding differentiation. The significance of this claim becomes clearer when viewed hierarchically across scales of reality. At the physical level, existence is governed by four fundamental interactions: the strong force, electromagnetism, the weak interaction, and gravity. Each force preserves a distinct mode of coherence. The strong force binds atomic nuclei into stable structural unity. Electromagnetism governs atomic interaction, chemistry, molecular organization, and biological function. The weak interaction permits lawful transformation of identity, enabling matter itself to evolve through constraint differentiation. Gravity organizes large-scale coherence across astronomical systems, preserving order across vast spatial and temporal scales. These forces are not isolated mechanisms acting independently upon passive matter. Rather, they establish the conditions under which stable identity can emerge at all. Modern quantum field theory deepens this realization further by revealing that particles themselves are not isolated substances, but stable excitations within relational fields. Identity becomes interpretable as persistence of organized interaction. Matter exists insofar as coherence is maintained. The profound significance of the fine structure constraint, alpha approximating 1/137, lies precisely here. This dimensionless proportionality governs the strength of electromagnetic interaction and therefore determines whether stable atoms, chemistry, molecular organization, and ultimately life itself can exist. If alpha was significantly different, coherent complexity would collapse. Matter would either bind too rigidly or fail to stabilize entirely. The possibility of differentiated order depends upon a narrow range within which coherence and transformation remain dynamically balanced. Thus, the atom itself reveals a universal principle. Stable existence emerges neither through total rigidity, no unrestricted diffusion, but through proportionate integration under lawful constraint. This principle extends upward recursively through every subsequent scale of organization. Atoms become chemistry. Chemistry becomes molecular systems. Molecular systems become DNA. DNA becomes biological identity. Biological identity becomes nervous system. Nervous systems become consciousness. Consciousness becomes abstraction. Abstraction becomes purpose. Purpose becomes civilization. At every level, coherent identity emerges through recursive integration of multiplicity. DNA offers one of the clearest examples of this process. DNA is not simply matter. It is matter organized to preserve information across time. The four forces cooperate hierarchically in its formation. The strong force enables atomic nuclei. The weak interaction enabled the stellar nucleosynthesis necessary for carbon chemistry. Gravity produced stable planetary environments. Electromagnetism governs molecular structure and replication directly. Yet DNA's deeper significance lies in the process it operationalizes. DNA preserves identity through recursive differentiation and reintegration. The double helix separates into complementary strands, reconstructs itself through lawful mapping relations, and reintegrates into new coherent structures while permitting bounded variation. Too much rigidity would prevent adaptation. Too much variation would dissolve continuity. Life survives through controlled transformation, preserving identity across expanding contexts. The weak interaction provides a particularly important analog. Unlike the other forces, the weak force transforms particle identity itself while preserving invariant constraints. A neutron becomes a proton not through arbitrary fragmentation, but through lawful differentiation maintaining continuity of the larger system. This reveals that differentiation itself is not the opposite of integration. Rather, differentiation is the mechanism through which integration expands into new domains of coherence. The same operator structure appears within cognition. Consciousness receives multiplicity through perception. Differentiation isolates invariant relations from variable characteristics. Integration binds those relations into conceptual identity. Concepts themselves become the substrate for higher abstractions. Through recursive abstraction, consciousness traverses scales of coherence unavailable to purely local systems. Human cognition, therefore, becomes uniquely capable of integrating local coherence into increasingly global frameworks. Science itself is the systematic expansion of this process. Newton unified terrestrial and celestial motion. Maxwell unified electricity and magnetism. Einstein unified space and time. Each developmental leap emerged through recursive integration of previously fragmented domains. This recursive movement toward higher order coherence naturally gives rise to metaphysical intuitions of unity. Logos, being, God, Tao, absolute order. Throughout history, human consciousness repeatedly encountered the intelligibility of reality and sought symbolic representations for the continuity underlying multiplicity. Yet the same process unfolds psychologically within the individual self. Purpose functions as the local integrative domain governing the evolution of consciousness across time. Purpose organizes attention, valuation, memory, emotion, and action into coherent developmental trajectories. Without purpose, consciousness fragments into competing impulses and disconnected stimuli. With purpose, the self acquires directional coherence capable of extending identity temporally beyond immediate conditions. Purpose therefore performs psychologically what gravity performs cosmologically, and what electromagnetism performs atomically. It organizes multiplicity into sustained coherence. The developmental progression of the self reflects this recursive expansion directly. In childhood, integration remains predominantly local and perceptual. The world is immediate, sensory, emotionally proximal. The self emerges as a bounded center within direct environments. Adolescence introduces differentiation pressure. Identity separates from inherited structures. Contradictions intensify. Coherence temporarily weakens because contextual awareness expands faster than integration capacity. Development becomes unstable precisely because consciousness is transitioning into a larger domain of coherence. Adulthood introduces directional integration through purpose. The self begins organizing values, actions, relationships, and time into coherent trajectories. Purpose acts as a psychological gravitational field, stabilizing identity across expanding complexity. Mature adulthood widens integration beyond the self alone. Consciousness increasingly integrates into itself into broader structures of continuity. Family, culture, civilization, generativity, wisdom, metaphysical orientation. The local domain of selfhood begins integrating itself into transpersonal scales of coherence. Importantly, this developmental process never fully concludes. Every successful integration expands contextual range. Expanded range reveals previously unseen multiplicity. New multiplicities require further differentiation and reintegration. Thus, complete integration is never final because expanding coherence continuously generates new developmental requirements. This principle applies equally to civilizations. Families integrate into tribes. Tribes integrate into city-states. City-states integrate into nations. Nations integrate into civilizations. At each level, local coherence initially dominates. Scaling pressures generate fragmentation. Contradictions intensify. And new integrative operators emerge. Civilizations evolve not through static perfection, but through recursive reorganization of coherence under increasing complexity. The rate of this expansion varies dramatically. Development accelerates where local contradictions intensify, where environmental pressures increase, where motivational density strengthens, and where integrative necessity becomes unavoidable. A stagnant system evolves slowly because local demands remain weak. A highly pressured system undergoes accelerated differentiation and therefore requires accelerated integration or collapses into fragmentation. Motivation therefore becomes far more than emotional desire. It becomes the energetic vector driving recursive integration across scales of identity. The stronger the motivational coherence, the greater the sustained attentional density, and the greater the developmental acceleration. What maintains continuity throughout this endless transformation is precisely what this framework calls the one in the many. The one is not static uniformity opposed to multiplicity. The one is the continuity preserved through recursive integration of multiplicity across expanding scales of existence. Thus, existence itself becomes developmental. The universe does not appear to move toward static equilibrium in the simplistic sense. Rather, coherent structures continuously differentiate while preserving larger order continuity. Stars produce heavier elements. Chemistry becomes biology. Biology becomes consciousness. Consciousness becomes civilization. Civilization becomes reflective self-awareness of the cosmos itself. Life, consciousness, civilization, and meaning are therefore not exceptions to cosmic order. They are higher order expressions of recursive integration within an expanding universe. The gradient of order persists because coherence reorganizes itself faster than entropy dissolves it. And perhaps this is the deepest implication of the one in the many. Reality persists through recursive integration across expanding scales of coherence. The one is not separate from the many. The one is the process through which the many become coherently themselves across time.
This is the one in the many. The principle of life is the process of integration from a single cell to an ideal human being. The story of life unfolds through integration, from a single percept to a library of knowledge. Through virtue, reason, honesty, independence, selfishness, productivity, you set your values, purpose, to achieve self-esteem and happiness. Through time and energy, from induction to integration to reduction, the smallest particle unifies matter, and the highest purpose unifies your life. You, the one in the many, matter. May you integrate your life with value-driven days.